Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Susan Paragallo. I'm the gallery coordinator and curator of the Jeannie Tangelson Gallery at the Art League of Long Island. And the current exhibition is the 60th Long Island Artists Exhibition. It is a biennial and open to artists from Brooklyn to Montauk. This year, 164 artists participated with 489 works of art. And out of that, our juror, Joshua Ruff, selected 60 works to hang on the walls and 3 honorable mentions and 3 awards of excellence. It was a very hard task, as you can quite imagine. And Joshua made some amazing, wonderful selections, including a broad range of mediums, styles, and subject matter. A little bit about Joshua. He is the Deputy Director and Director of Collections and Interpretation at the Long Island Museum in Stony Brook. He's a graduate of Syracuse and Stony Brook Universities, and he has worked at the museum for 24 years plus. And has curated over 60 exhibitions and published several books and magazine articles. We are honored to have Joshua Ruff serve as the juror for our 60th Long Island Artists Exhibition. It's been a pleasure to work with you. And take it away, Joshua.
I mean, the honor and the pleasure were mine. I just this was such a great project, and thank you, Susan. Thank you to the Art League. Thank you to the artists. It's been a really phenomenal project, and I felt the privilege of being able to look at the quality of work that's being produced by artists out there, all corners of the island. It's really quite amazing, and I just wanted to say a couple of things at the outset, just to kind of address the sort of the winnowing process and the blind choosing process, and narrowing it down to the 60 selections. I found that part daunting. I'm not going to lie. I found it most helpful, I think, really, to do this over the course of a week and a half, and to keep taking fresh looks at the work. When you're talking about that much of volume of work, you're talking about at times, if you stay at it too much, you start to get a little bleary-eyed, and you may not make the best decisions. But in many instances, it was a very painful process to remove artists and art from the selections. I tried keeping a few things in mind in selecting. I wanted, and Susan and I spoke about this at the start, we wanted to have a show that really felt balanced in materials, in media, and choices of subject, style, and so forth. And yet, at the same time, it wasn't just about kind of fitting a box of, we're going to have this much of this and this much of this. It was not about that at all. It was really about looking at the works of art as individuals, and really trying to sensitively go through and think it through carefully. Although clearly oil paintings were the largest category of work under consideration, because by number that was the most of what we had, and it was also particularly difficult at times with individual artists that had multiple selections, that had a few works that were really worthy of being chosen. Ultimately, I think that it's important to say that every one of the 60 finalists produced something that truly belongs there in this gallery. I'm absolutely certain a different juror would have made different choices, and I sleep fine with that. That makes complete sense to me. But I want to underline that I truly tried to take each work of art to heart, and to think about it carefully, and to look carefully across the board. I also want to say that this is an important thing to point out, just that occasionally selections were removed because the photograph of the work was unclear, out of focus, or simply didn't clearly represent the work in question well enough. It's not that we're ever judging the quality of the photo that you take of your artwork, but if there's some information missing, or if there's something that's unclear and out of focus, it makes it hard to make a decision on that. And so that's just a small point, but one worth mentioning, I think. And then the final thing to mention as we start to roll into looking at a number of selections is that I just want to give a shout out to Susan and the Art League for just a great installation. You know, I do this a lot in the course of every year. We have 4 to 5 to 6 exhibitions a year. I know what's involved in the layout and in contemplating matchings and pairings. And I just want to say that this show is really well composed in color, line, form, subject matter. Things look great together. They hang well together. It's just a great looking show. And it's a testament to the good job that the Art League did. So we're going to look at just a sampling. We're going to look at about a third of the exhibition, 20 works that we're going to talk about. And you know, there's no sort of prioritization per se. I intentionally, in the 20 works that I chose to talk about, I listed them alphabetically so that no one feels that, you know, I'm kind of prioritizing anyone out of sorts here. That just seemed like a good way to proceed. We did get a number of really fine print and graphic work in the show. This is a good example of that. This is by Tamar Bernstein. It's called Breakthrough. It's a monotype. And it is probably done from a copper plate. It doesn't really clearly indicate that. That was my assumption. Really has a solidly strong vertical impression track through the center. Perhaps that's what the title is alluding to. The artist is a studio art major at Adelphi University and has a concentration in printmaking and has a bright future, I think. We also had a fair number, a very small number of what I would characterize as other types of sculptural work or sort of small scale textile work. This was the lone fiber artist that we chose for the show, Irina Gendler-Bugak. This is Firebird, and she had a number of really good works to choose from. Ultimately, it was the vibrancy of the color of this. It was that fully sort of realized combination of flora and fauna in the piece that I think was eventually what won out in this selection. This is Lorina Tayeg Capitulo's work, and it's on the title wall. And I just consider it to be a really conceptually strong, powerful work. And it was well chosen for the title wall. If you look at that title, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, the swimmer is underwater, obviously, literally out of our sight. The swimmer's shape is composed of all the detritus, the debris, shameful, colossal gardens of junk that we know that are out there in great plumes, buried deep in the Pacific and Atlantic. And given it's removed from our daily experiences, it doesn't occupy our consciousness, but we should keep it in our awareness, I think, is sort of the implication of the title. Ultimately, it should not be out of mind. It's a wonderful watercolor, and given the fact that it's making a statement and doing it with such technical precision and focus, I just found it a really compelling piece. The artist has actually done a large body of work in both sculpture and painting that has a focus on environmental themes before. In 2001, she was an awardee in the exhibition Toxic Landscape. Artists Examine the Environment, which was on display in Havana, Cuba. Right next to that painting in the gallery, we have Michelle Garfield's Peloton. It's an oil, and it's a nice big size, 36 by 36. When I saw this, I immediately thought Leroy Neiman. I just couldn't help but recognize the resemblance. The artist has a series of works that depict bicycle racers, marathon runners, people in motion. And, Neiman was the famous American artist who painted ballet dancers, boxers, football players, Olympic athletes, Playboy bunnies, all kinds of people in motion. He's been dead for almost 10 years, so it's perhaps easy to forget how famous and prolific an artist he once was. But like Neiman, Michelle Garfield has adopted this impressionist, colorful style that really puts the emphasis on the movement and the action. And you have a simple background treatment that really brings that to the fore. This is the type of work that puts you in the scene, and you actually can kind of feel the headwind and the changing altitude that the bikers are facing as they move forward. This is a fine acrylic painting. If I told you that the artist were a high school student, would your jaw drop like mine? I was just really impressed with this. The artist Trinity Housh is actually the salutatorian for the class of 22 at Elwood John H. Glenn High School. She belongs to the school's National Art Honor Society, but she actually intends to study biophysics or biomedical engineering in college. The painting gets all the little things right. It's highly detailed. It's got great perspective, just nice layering on those reflective surfaces, both in the plastic container and also that cleanest of clean stovetop surfaces. Just really a stellar work. This was one of my favorite pieces in the exhibition. This is a relief sculpture, Amongst the Lilies by Lori Horowitz. And I think one of the things that I appreciate about this the most is that in that wide combination of materials, copper, brass, fiber, and caustic wax, photographic element, fiber, you don't have a superfluous material amongst them. They're all really working together. They're all integral to the work. Those figurative shapes that emerge from the sculpture, the heads that we see that emerge from the landscape almost as if they are rocks, but you can clearly see sort of human form. They're organically human form. It's through the layering of the wax, and the fabric and metal elsewhere just help to illustrate and provide an outward wonderful depth and texture to the landscape. I know that Lori is with us on the call, and I'll ask her a little bit later on in the conversation here to talk a little bit about this piece. So moving on, we have this painting, a coastal scene from Nada Javanshire. It's Long Beach. It's a very large canvas. It's 60 by 48, and the artist made a wonderful choice here with the framing of it. It's a kind of monumental, colossal black and gilt frame that makes it stand out on the wall. I've given you two dimensions, 60 by 48, but the third dimension you're not seeing is it's 4 inches. It's actually, three-dimensional sticking out. And I think a sort of excellent choice in this. As Long Islanders, we see a lot of paintings, right, of different coastal-oriented scenes. Sometimes you're looking at jetties, as you are here. Sometimes you're looking at piers, but something that really helps this work is the fact that your perspective and your point of view, you're looking outward. The seagulls are helping you do that. The seagulls in their pose away from the viewer, looking out. I can think of many famous American paintings that adopt this type of a tactic. Winslow Homer's Veterans in a New Field, Andrew Wyeth's Christina's World, where the figure, the point of emphasis, the focal point, whether it be a person or an animal, is looking away, and it helps to really kind of enlarge our perception of meaning. And it's as I say, it's just a grand scale painting, really lovely work on the detail of the algae that's draped across the rocks of that jetty. Just a terrific work. There were a number of fine photographic submissions. This black and white work by Dave Johns. I love the verticality of this image. I love the sort of different viewpoints that we have from the three different figures in the work: the street level people as the pedestrians as they walk past, and the window wall display figure, this tall top-hatted gentleman who is almost a stand-in for the city of New York, who is in fact taller than the Empire State Building itself in terms of reflection. Just a really captivating, interesting work. And this, we have a interesting abstract work, Neurogenic Whiteness, by Suzanne Liff, and it is acrylic, watercolor, and collage, a handful, one of a handful of abstract paintings that are in the show, and the artist has used her combination of these materials really well. The sort of massing of color, that strong, fibrous shapes that emerge from the center. It's somewhat reminiscent of some of Helen Frankenthaler's work from the 1950s. It's a really strong image, and I think the artist had been registered for the today's program. I'm not sure if she's with us, but perhaps she could provide an explanation on its meaning. As you know, the title could perhaps be perceived in a number of different ways, but I would not want to you know, misspeak and get that wrong. So later, if she's with us, we'll ask her. Another outstanding painting in the exhibition. This is by William Lowe, Comset Barn, nice, enormous size, 28 by 40. Full disclosure, what drew this to me initially is that this is, I think, one of the most compelling agricultural structures on the North Shore of Long Island. I've known it for years. Comset is a favorite place of my wife and I to go for walks. This cathedral-like barn complex. You have a dairy barn, a hay barn. They were, of course, built in the 1920s for Marshall Field, and it's a grand structure. It has great symmetry, but also by its very placement on the landscape, you get these wonderful end of day sunlights raking across it. And I have myself taken a lot of photographs of this over the years at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I know other people have depicted it as well, but this is just a really successful painting of merging the architecture to the landscape, and done in nice big scale. It's really a wonderful work. Conchetta Maggiore did this small bust Alma in clay. The exhibition has a small number of figurative sculptures, and this one I felt just in terms of a portrait really achieves this sort of feeling of weariness in its subject. The woman's headscarf seems to echo the lines in her face. It captures both a strength and apprehension and determination kind of all together, and just as a really good piece. This painting by Tom Mason, Tomko Rothko, quite an interesting work. It appears to be a self-portrait of sorts. Tom Mason identifies this in a statement in the Saatchi art website, saying that Mark Rothko arguably was the most vociferous anti-figurative painter. He railed against it. I love his canon, and I put myself inside a Rothko painting to ponder that conundrum. And it's just a powerful image, of course, with that sharp contrast in the white suit, white shoes, that nice shock of white hair juxtaposed against the Rothko canvas in the backdrop. Okay, moving on, Julie Mclaughlin, Coffee and a Cigarette. The question is, how do you pull off a likeness with so much of a portrait figure's face obscured? You have a carefully placed coffee cup, an ashy cigarette, but you can't hide the nails, that ring, the wiry wavy hair, the sleeveless blouse. I would imagine that we all well know a person like this, or maybe a number of people like this. She's sort of the Housewives of Morristown, New Jersey, circa 1960s. And I shared this with my own mother, and she immediately identified this as a friend of her mom's, Rita DeMarco. But I would guess that you probably, many of you would have your own titles of person or people that this reminds you of. In style, this is nothing like Alice Neal, but what reminded me of Alice Neal, in a sense, was that you have this type of ubiquitous person that we know, and yet I think it's just very striking in the sense that you have this familiarity, but the familiarity is somewhat obscured by the pose. Cliff Miller, a wonderful natural scene, a fall scene, the Golden Sycamore. He is an exceptional oil painter, and of which there are a number in the exhibition. He was a student of Harold Stevenson's in Seacliff. Stevenson, of course, who learned from Norman Rockwell. And Cliff had a long, very successful career as an illustrator of book covers, magazines, other published works. In more recent years, he's continued a lot of great, strong portraiture, but also works that depict the natural world, as this does. I love the gradation of that blue sky, which is very subtle, and the meticulous structuring of all those colorful leaves in the sycamore tree. It's just a really fine work. Now, there are a number of things that we're looking at as we go through that I think you can't obviously see in a digital two-dimensional format, and you can't necessarily get with this work the right point of view and perspective that actually you have some mixed media in here that makes this stand out. It's not just simply a painting. It is a really interesting arrangement of materials by Margaret Minardi. It's a dreamy arrangement. You have this oriental carpet that the young woman is laying across. It's collaged, it's cut and pieced into place, and there's an array of geometric shapes and strong line, color, form, and then the repetition of that pattern, those sort of geometric patterns that appear on her skin, almost tattoo-like. And she's holding the lines of the strings, which have chicken wishbones attached. It's really a mesmerizing work. Again, you can't see that unless you actually see that in person. So it's a great painting that way. A number of the artists that were in the exhibition were people that I know and have worked with in the past, and are even in this collection at the Long Island Museum. But I want to be clear that, as I was going through the choices and making selections, that honestly never occurred to me, and I wasn't seeing anybody's names too. But Susie Gatch-Peel is someone I know, and is a fine painter. She comes from a family of artists. Her father was George Gatch. He was a painter and sculptor in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Did many good Long Island, North Shore, Nassau County scenes. Also did sculptures of various prominent individuals like Robert Moses. Her grandfather was the much admired sculptor Stephen Gatch. So what I had not seen much before this work, though, from Susie, while I'd seen a lot of her oil landscapes, I had not seen a watercolor landscape. And this one, I think, is great for its restraint. This is the kind of scene that you could all probably very likely walk into today from various shorelines across the island. And you have just a sort of limited palette of color, but really effective construction of the dead and dying vegetation covered by snow. It's a really terrific work. Another award of excellence went to this wonderful work by David Pacon, Trout Stream. This grand sort of in the vein of Hudson River School tradition, really magnificent large oil painting from an outstanding artist, and I know one of your good faculty members at the Art League. It has depth, it feels thoroughly connected to a real world place, and the development of its perspective and looking up the stream towards the edge of the mountain range is really carefully developed. Very interesting color range. I counted no less than 15 different shades of green in the foliage, the canopy of trees, and the floating vegetation that you see there. And also there's a sort of individualization of the rocks and the trees and branches that pepper that work and really make it look very realistic and convey a painterly realist scene. Another really fine black and white photograph in the exhibition, Afternoon Repose by Joseph Paragallo. The first time I saw this poignant photograph, I mean, I fell in love with it. It was something that I have seen similar photos before, but I think that this really achieves this wonderful shadowy effect with the sunlight being filtered through the blinds in this great black and white image. But as you start to look at it, you notice other things. You see the glint in her irises. You just get this sort of moment of quiet peace and calm in looking at it. And there's a vulnerability there that I think is really powerful. This last year and a half has been tough to be any kind of human, but let's say especially it's been hard to be a kid. And I think that this touches on that and is really a remarkable work. This is by Marielle Petarka. It's a woodcut with colorgraph elements, fetus in a modern world, and a fairly dark take on that modern world where a child of today is born into. And woodcut prints, I think, really can have that kind of powerful connotation in their structure and form. Thinking of the powerful work of Leonard Baskin, which is of course different than this style, but his woodcuts tended to be strong, figurative, relatable images and images of the Holocaust. A really strong work here and well put together composition. Susan Roston's Hiking Middlefield is also an honorable mention. It's a large-scale oil abstract painting in the upstairs gallery, and on a far wall in the back side of the gallery, well placed. It's a massive sort of blocking of color that you see that comes together and gives this impression of a crisp, colorful fall day at the foot of the Berkshires. This painting by James Schultz, it's an acrylic. There's this sort of menacing undertone to it, but also sort of a mysteriousness. He's done a terrific job of depicting this crumbling ruin of a house off Ocean Avenue. And there's also this note of nostalgia in the girl with her multi-tone shirt and bicycle. We could be looking at a scene from you know, the 1980s here, perhaps. But the sky overhead looming, and just a sort of a feeling of morboseness about it is just a really effective painting. Another honorable mention work that was chosen by Elisa Shea. I'm fine, it's fine, everything is fine. I love this watercolor painting. It's just wonderful, painterly realist, photorealist work, just so technically outstanding. The multicolored spools of thread, the complex interlacing of the fabric. It's just really wonderful to see in person as well. I know I keep saying that, but I really do think that you lose something on the computer screen. One thing that you lose is that when you see this in person, you're seeing it on a rich, heavily textured paper that adds a tactile feel to it. But there's a precision here and a wide color palette, which I think you get a sense of, and with the different spools of fabric, but also with all of what's going on in the center of it. It's just a very successful work. And last, before we start to reach out to some of the artists that are on the call, this is by Despina Zografos. It's Strolleroptera. It's a cut paper work, and you can see that there's writing in the surround of it that which you may not be able to make out. It actually reads in repetition form, "What you seek is seeking you." It's a very meticulously put together work. She creates her pieces by placing together 2 layers of hand-cut paper, or by using 1 layer of hand-cut paper combined with a 2nd layer of acrylic painting. That's not what she's doing here, but that's what another body of her work. And you have this sort of web-like, very intricate result. On her website, she indicates the meaning and reference of the title of this piece. She says that Strolleroptera is an autoscedastic word pursuant to Lepidoptera, an order of insects that include butterflies. The notion of transformation is inherent to butterflies, and in these pieces of paper, through the process of paper cutting, it's being transformed into a lace-like surface. An autoscediastic, meaning offhand, little forethought and preparation. I think that's actually a word that describes. It doesn't describe any work that's actually in this exhibition. There was nothing offhand, nothing that had little forethought throughout this entire exhibition. Everyone, the thousands of hours of work that artists put into their works, the great care that they did, it's obvious from what you see here. And I want to say thank you to all of the artists. It's been a great pleasure to work on the show, but I do want to get some interaction and maybe ask a few of the artists that are here to talk about their work that we've seen, or perhaps if we didn't have some of your work on view in this talk, would be happy to hear about your impressions of things overall too. I see Lori Horowitz there. Is it possible to hear from you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, anyhow, I just want to thank you for the wonderful job you did on choosing the show and working on the show, as well as this presentation. It was really interesting, really well done.
Thank you.
In terms of my piece, I think what you said about it was pretty spot on. I'm very interested in the materiality and the experimentation and the use of different types of material. And when I work, I'm always trying to invent and to explore. So this piece pulled together many different areas that I've been working on. And in the past, my work has been really figurative and portraiture work relating to people I meet and people I get to know, some behind me. And when COVID hit, I retreated into nature and began taking pictures of the landscape, along lots of walks. And I came upon these, what are cedar knees. And they're small root formations. And I've taken hundreds of pictures of them. And I have a whole series based on these tree roots. And the figures that you see in this painting or this relief sculpture, those are actual tree roots. And they've been transformed through painting and color and wax into figurative forms. And the rest of it is really what I see around me in terms of nature. And I've also been working a lot with copper and its different properties, learning about different types of patina. And all the coloration in the copper work is done with chemicals, ammonia and vinegar and salts and sulfurs and all sorts of things. So it's been interesting and fun playing with chemistry. And the other element that's really important is the shadow. So doing these figurative forms and then the surprise of shining light through it and giving me a shadow is also really important. So the panel that's beneath, or the surface, it's called what this whole series is, What Lies Beneath, is really about not knowing what's behind things or what's underneath and focusing on what we see on the surface. So it's really talking a lot about what's going on in the world, what we don't see, and taking things at face value and not necessarily always going deeper to see what's past the beauty on the surface. So that's what this is about.
It's wonderful. It's really terrific. How is it, just out of curiosity, how is it actually hanging? Do you have a cleat or what's going on?
It has a wire across the back. I've been working in sculpture and metal and all sorts of things for years. And at this point, I have a heavy background in theater and staging, and nothing I make weighs more than 10 pounds. So this whole piece probably weighs about 5 pounds, if that.
Oh, wow. Oh.
So everything is very lightweight. The surface is all quilted with chicken wire and aluminum and soft sculpture underneath the surface of the piece itself. So it's all constructed so it's strong but lightweight.
I think that's another attribute I hadn't even considered, that is just, I mean, I would have expected it to weigh much more. It's quite impressive that you got that much weightiness in the result, and in spite of the fact that it's not that weighty.
Right. Well, one of the reasons I went to the screen material is also because I was working in solid copper. It was very heavy. So using the screen, I got rid of half the weight, as well as a theater technique is using something called scrim, which the light either goes through it and leaves a shadow, or the light bounces off of it. So it's kind of a lighting trick. So I've taken to using screen quite a bit as well.
If I could just say very quickly, I've been seeing this piece for how many weeks now and kind of living with it, but this is the first time that I've noticed that there, in the piece that's hanging from the bottom, there's a figure in there. And now that I've seen the figure, I can't unsee it. It's beautiful. It's really a beautiful piece, the whole thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Thank you. Okay.
I wanted to see if we might, I see Elisa Shea, I think, is on this call, and maybe we can have her talk about her piece if she's able to.
I'm not nearly as articulate as Lori is about my work, so
It's a great watercolor. It's just really, I can't even imagine. I know that artists don't always like this question. How long did it take? But I mean, this
I would have to go back and look, but my pieces usually take me about 3 to 4 months to finish. So, but you know, I have kids and I do deal with that too. So I'm not painting 8 hours a day, but at least 2 or 3 hours a day.
You have.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I noticed from your website that you have a number of different sort of series of types of works, and another work that sticks out in my mind is this sort of, you see a stack of LPs, and you like topics or subject matter where the beauty is in the details. Yes.
I do like details, and this is like an anti-anxiety drug for me, is painting these, you know, super tedious, detailed things. That the reason I paint records is because my husband sells vintage vinyl, so they're everywhere around my house. This piece is actually, I've been painting a lot of feminist work lately. And I had read last year a book by Rebecca Traister called Good and Mad: The Revolutionary Power of Women's Anger. And there was a chapter where it was talking about, you know, how many middle-aged women, you know, and younger are in the workforce now, yet our domestic responsibilities haven't decreased. So we're doing all of that. We're raising children. We're working full time. We're often caring for our parents as well. But at the same time, we're keeping all of our rage or whatever we're feeling about all of this.
It's all fine.
Overwhelmed inside, right? And just putting to the world, it's fine. I'm fine. Everything is fine. And as I read that paragraph, this is exactly what was in my mind, this image. That's so great. I've done a lot of thread paintings. I have a lot of, and I sew a lot personally. So I just sort of created what I saw in my head with my props and then did this.
Great. It's just a great work. Really, really wonderful.
Thanks.
I think, let's see, who else do we have? I see Joe Paragallo is there, I think. Yes. Hi, Joe. You want to talk about your work? Let's see if we can find it.
Sure.
Let's have a little bit of problems with my, bear with me.
All right. Well, first off, let me just say thank you for your kind words regarding this. And this subject is one of my favorite subjects, and every time it seems like that I aim a camera at her, she always feels a need to take a pose or to do something. Or this is really one of the rare occurrences where I've actually captured her not in motion or not, you know, posing for the camera. And I thought that the expression was just sort of a blank slate, that one who's viewing it could superimpose whatever they wanted to onto that impression or onto her expression. And when I had first taken this, it was in color, and then I decided to convert it to black and white post-processing, and I thought it was just so much stronger in black and white. And I really wanted to emphasize the contrast between the black and the white. And I just felt that it made a stronger image. And yeah, so it was one of my favorites.
And then, Joe, this is, who is this? Is this your granddaughter? Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Very good. And how old is she?
She just turned 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
So wonderful portrait, and what a memory. I mean, what a memory she'll have and you'll have.
Yeah.
For years to come.
Yep. Thank you.
I also see Susan Roston on the call. Maybe would be good to see. Hi, Susan.
I want to thank you for a really beautiful selection of works, Joshua. You did an unbelievable job. And I've worked with judges in my research and talent development, so I know what a difficult job it is to go through a large body of work and make selections and be consistent.
Thank you.
So I thank you for that.
Thank you. And this scene, is this a place that you know well?
We have a second home up in the Berkshires, as you mentioned, and after being isolated for so many months, we were able to finally get up there and spend some time. At the same time, I have been working on a biography of Stan Brodsky, who was my mentor, my thesis advisor, and I may have had origins in landscape painting, but certainly had spent a number of years doing figures and more figurative work and portraiture, and decided that it was time to get back into the experiences that he had in order to be able to better relate to what he was thinking when he was working in plein air. And so this was part of a series that I did that started in the studio, working in context, and then outside, trying to extrapolate from my experiences in landscape and create some representation of what I was experiencing. And here it was the colors of the fall, as you mentioned. It was the movement through space and the vertical climbs involved in hiking, and chose a fairly large canvas so that I could confront all of that as I worked.
It has a lot of presence. And I think, again, this was one of those things where the choice of placement in the gallery was just really excellent. You come up and you're facing it. It's just a really terrific work that way. I'd like to open it up. I wonder if there are other people that we haven't heard from out there that might want to talk a little bit about some of their work or anything that we've seen. I think we'd be happy to hear from anybody. Any comments, thoughts, impressions, even or naturally questions.
Hello, this is Suzanne. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, Suzanne, hi.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for honoring my painting by showing it today.
Sure. Let's see if we can get it. We'll try to get ourselves back there if we can.
It's
Yep.
Okay. Have to get the L.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that there's a faster way to do this. Okay. Here we are.
Yeah. So, well, this was very exciting for me. This painting is really a rework of another painting that into my journey into abstract expressionism, which was a real challenge for me because my teacher, who was a teacher at the gallery, Kevin Larkin, just tried to get me not to think, but to just respond to my own creations as they evolve. So it's very organic. And it began, somehow it just began looking like a brain to me when it first appeared on canvas, and I thought it was finished. But then I let the canvas tell me what to do, and I just began responding once again to it, almost whiting out a lot of the initial paint, and including some older pieces of watercolors that I had created several years ago and saved. And just, this is an exercise in organicity and sort of just being cerebral, but without being cerebral, responding to the work and just integrating color and integrating something that was telling me where to go next. And a lot of the collage created the divisions that seem very fibrous and Venus, kind of vein-like, and and that's how it evolved. And then somehow it told me it was finished. And so I stopped. But for me, it was really a great journey into color and responding to color and having color speak to itself as I moved along.
Well, thank you for explaining that. It is, and the title, what's the,
Well,
what does it mean?
as I said, the neurogenic,
Right.
for me personally is that my son is an interventional vascular neurologist. And somehow, as I was painting, I could see some pictures of angiograms and just blood flow and body and vibrancy that way and life through that way. And
Right.
then the whiteness part was my response to it, of having to just go into it, to just cover it, and then let other aspects of it emerge again. So,
yeah,
title.
very good, very good. Are there other people that might like to jump in? Any other thoughts or questions? All right. This has been wonderful. I really wish we could have done this. Oh, Jim, is that Jim Graff?
Yeah, if you got time, I'll talk a little bit about
please do. Yes.
The painting that I had in there was Returning Home, which was a foggy scene at Buffalo, turn of the century, 1900s.
Yes, yes.
I don't know if you have any images of it there or not, probably not.
I wouldn't be able to, I don't think I'd be able to pull it up fast enough, but it's from, you have a different, the options, the selections that you gave us to choose from. There were a number of works that were specifically early 20th century that I remember, sort of harbor scenes. Really interesting work.
Yeah, I mean, I'll explain a little bit. I mean, I spent 45 years in the maritime industry, both in the design phase and then also working for the American Bureau of Shipping and Marine Safety, and then in the corporate aspects. And then I retired about 4 years ago, and I taught myself how to paint. So for the last 4 years, I've been painting. And I picked a time period that I found interesting in maritime history, which was the first decade of the 20th century, from 1900 to 1910. Because it was a transition period from sail to steam to diesel, and then you went from horse and wagons to mechanized, transportation. So it was kind of that transition period. So I decided to pick, similar to, I don't know if you know anything about John Stobart and his paintings, maritime paintings, but to pick a different city, different American cities, pretty much, the waterfront activity in each city, and try to make each one a little different as far as the color scheme or the palette and so forth. So far, I have about 27 paintings in the collection, same time period. And the one that was in the show was a night scene, foggy night scene in Buffalo.
Buffalo, yeah.
And there was a tugboat in the front, and that tugboat used to, for 25 years, would go back and forth from Cleveland to Buffalo transporting barges. And about 20 years after that scene of that picture, that tugboat went down in Lake Erie without a trace. All 8 crew members were lost. They never found it. So it was kind of an eerie returning home to Buffalo in the fog at that night. So I had a kind of an emotional experience going through it. But so I try to make them as pretty much historically accurate. I do all the research on the scenes. A lot of times I even go as far as the Sanford insurance maps and get the maps of the city, time period, get the types of buildings, material, and so forth, and then create it from that. So.
That was something that I wondered about when I looked at your work was, the resources that you draw from, and I appreciate the you telling us kind of how you go about that process. It does seem like there's a lot of research and real care and interest, and it's great because it's sort of it's like looking at a photograph in terms of resemblance, but they're their own thing. Your work, your paintings are they're their own creations, and it's great to have you involved in this.
May I
Yeah.
say that I remember your painting. I remember that painting very vividly without even seeing it here. It was just, it took my breath away. I thought it was a gorgeous painting.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Do we have anyone else that might want to say anything?
Hi, Joy Fields. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you for including my painting, Fall Up. It was next to the sycamore tree,
Mhm.
and they're very similar in color and context. They're both trees, and mine was looking up through the trees, but they had very similar colors, and I believe even the exact same frame. And they're right next to each other, which was really interesting. At first, I'm like, wait, why? But then it really made sense because it drew you in even more. And I want to be let you know, I'm incredibly happy that you selected my painting, because I just started painting again since college. You know, been a stay-at-home mom, and I finally decided I'm not going to wait any long for my turn. So it was a big win for me. Thank you so
great.
much.
Well, really well done. Really good. And you know, I think absolutely the resemblance there to Cliff Miller's painting was definitely there in terms of colors and composition and perspective. Great work. Really, really good. Susan, do you have any last thoughts or anything that you'd like to wrap this up with?
Just that it has been an honor to work with you and with all of the beautiful submissions. I mean, not just the ones on the walls, but all of them. It takes my breath away how much incredible talent there is out there. And I want to thank everyone for participating. It's been an honor, really.
Truly, yeah. And I hope that for many of you on this call, look forward to meeting some of you in person, all of you in person at some point. But it was a great pleasure to be able to work on this. As I said, it was a privilege. I can't imagine having another opportunity where I'd be able to look at that much art and be able to really kind of see what's out there. It's just been great. And I just say to all of you, keep doing what you're doing, keep the passion going, keep the work going. Even when the passion's not there, sometimes you have to keep it going and it comes back. It does, you know, you find your feet, you find your footing, you keep going. But really all of you are wonderful. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.